The collapse of a gilded cage, Elena's reckoning. Hello, everyone. If you ever thought you knew the person beside you, prepare to hear a story that will chill you to the bone. It's a story about love, betrayal, and the incredible power we find when everything we know shatters. If this story touches your heart, give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our most impactful narratives. And now, let's dive into the exact moment Elena's life turned into a nightmare. The sound that shattered her world was not a scream or a crash. It was a laugh. The laugh of a woman, light and melodic, echoing from the master bedroom that she and Ricardo had designed together. Elena Castillo, 7 months pregnant and carrying a bag of groceries, froze in the marble foyer of her own home. The perfume of an unknown, expensive, strong floral fragrance, so different from her own subtle jasmine scent, floated in the air. Then she saw them. A pair of impossible blood-red stiletto heels, carelessly tossed onto the Persian rug. They were not hers. And in that silent, suffocating moment, Elena knew her life was a lie. Chapter 1. The Broken Foundation. The air in Toledo was heavy with the late August humidity, promising a storm that had not yet broken. Elena felt a similar pressure building in her chest as she closed the heavy oak front door. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot in the cavernous silence, a silence immediately betrayed by another wave of that musical laughter coming from upstairs. Her hands, slick with sweat, tightened around the paper grocery bags. Lentils, quinoa, prenatal vitamins, the mundane ingredients of a life she believed was real. She set the bags down on the polished granite kitchen island, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she were a visitor in a museum of her own life. Everything was impeccable. The stainless steel Sub-Zero refrigerator, the gleaming wolf range, the custom cabinetry that cost more than her parents' first house. Ricardo Navarro demanded perfection, and Elena, for 10 years, had been the perfect curator of his perfect world. Her bare feet made no sound on the cool travertine floors as she moved toward the sweeping, curved staircase. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumming against the soft, steady rhythm of the baby moving inside her. Breathe, Elena. Just breathe. But the air was too thin, stolen by the woman upstairs. Halfway up the stairs, she heard his voice, low and laced with a tone of amusement she hadn't heard in years. Easy, Sophia. We have time. She's at her Pilates class. Sophia. The name was a shard of glass in her throat. Sophia Vega, the new vice president of marketing at Ricardo's investment firm. Elena had met her once at a company gala. She was young, sharp, with a predatory smile and a designer dress that looked poured onto her body. In that moment, Elena had felt antique and invisible next to her, and now she knew why. She reached the top of the staircase, her hand tracing the cold, smooth wood of the railing. Her bedroom door was ajar. Opening it felt like opening the door to a tomb, and there they were. Ricardo, her husband of a decade, the man whose child she carried, stood only in his suit trousers, his back to her. In front of him, sitting on the edge of their bed, her bed, was Sophia Vega, draped in a black silk robe that Elena recognized as her own. The red stilettos in the foyer now made horrifying sense. Sophia was laughing, head thrown back, as Ricardo leaned down to kiss her neck. The world stopped in that instant. The blood rushing in Elena's ears drowned out all sound, except the frantic beat of her own heart. Ricardo! Her voice was a whisper, a dry leaf rustling on the ground. It was barely a sound, yet it cut through the moment like a surgeon's scalpel. He froze. He snapped his head up and turned slowly. His eyes widened in a fleeting expression of panic before settling into a familiar mask of annoyance. It was the same look he gave her when she overcooked his steak, or when a stock he invested in dropped a quarter point. "Elena, what are you doing home so early?" he said, his voice calm and controlled. Sofia Vega slid off the bed, clutching the silk robe tighter around herself. Her masterfully made-up face showed a flash of triumph. She wasn't ashamed. She was victorious. "My class was canceled," Elena said, her gaze locked on Ricardo. She could feel the baby moving, a flurry of limbs that mirrored her own internal chaos. "I obviously should have called first. It seems I'm interrupting." Ricardo ran a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair. He took a step toward her, away from Sofia, a subconscious act of distancing. "Look, Elena, let's not be dramatic. It's not what it looks like." The lie was so bald, so insulting, it almost made her laugh. "It's not what it looks like?" she repeated, her voice trembling. She gestured with a shaking hand toward Sofia, who was now watching them with a distant curiosity, like a scientist observing rats in a maze. "Then what is it, Ricardo? What exactly am I seeing?" "It was a mistake," he said, his tone shifting from annoyance to appeasement. It was his deal-closing voice, the one he used to charm investors and crush opponents. "Sofia and I had a stressful week. It meant nothing. It meant enough for her to already be wearing my robe in our bed," Elena countered, a surge of adrenaline piercing the shock. Sofia finally spoke, her voice smooth as polished stone. "Perhaps you should leave, Elena. Give him some space to think." The sheer audacity of the demand took Elena's breath away. To be told to leave her own house by the woman sleeping with her husband. Elena's gaze snapped to her. "Don't you talk to me! Gather your things and get out of my house!" Ricardo stepped between them. "Enough. Elena, calm down. You're pregnant. You can't get this upset." He was using their baby as a shield, a tool to manage her. "Don't you dare," she whispered, the words raw with pain. "Don't you dare use our child to excuse this, to excuse her. It's an affair, Elena. It happens," he finally exploded, his frustration boiling over. The charming facade cracked, revealing the ugly arrogance beneath. "My God, you're acting like it's the end of the world. We'll get over it. People do." He didn't understand. He thought this was an item on a financial balance sheet, a temporary dip he could correct. He couldn't see that he had just used a hammer to shatter the very foundation of her life. The house, the marriage, the future she carried inside her. Everything was a glass house, and he had just smashed every last pane. "No," she said, her voice suddenly clear and tranquil, the eye of her own personal hurricane. "We are not getting over this." She turned without looking at either of them again. She walked down the stairs, each step a measured, agonizing movement. She picked up her car keys from the bowl by the door. Her hand wasn't even shaking anymore. It was numb, a ghost in her own house. "Elena, where are you going?" Ricardo called from the top of the stairs. "Don't be ridiculous. We need to talk about this." She stopped with her hand on the doorknob. She could hear the first thick drops of rain beginning to beat against the windows. The promised storm had finally arrived. Without turning around, she said, "There's nothing left to talk about." She walked out the door and into the rain, leaving the keys to the Mercedes on the porch. She did not look back. She had no destination. She only knew she could never, ever return. The life she had known was over. Chapter 2. The Strategic Retreat. The rain fell in blinding sheets, blurring the manicured gardens and stone facades of the estate into a watercolor wash of greens and grays. Elena drove, her hands gripping the steering wheel of her modest Honda CR-V, the car Ricardo called her errand mobile, with white-knuckled intensity. She had no destination, only a direction. Away. Every kilometer she put between herself and the glass house was a small, defiant breath of air in her new, suffocating reality. For the first hour, she was on autopilot, her mind a whir of shock and betrayal. The image of Sofia in her robe, of Ricardo's expression of annoyance, played on a torturous loop. Tears ran down her face, mixing with the rain on the window she had opened, needing to feel something real. But as the initial wave of grief subsided, it was replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Elena had spent 10 years subsumed by Ricardo's life. She had given up her promising career in art curation to become Mrs. Navarro, a role that involved managing 3 properties, organizing charity galas, and ensuring Ricardo's life flowed with perfection, friction-free. She had become an accessory, and like any outdated accessory, she had just been replaced. The power imbalance in their relationship had always been there, a silent current. It was his name, his money, his world. She was simply allowed to live in it. Now expelled, she felt a terrifying, dizzying sense of freedom. He thought she was just a dramatic, hormonal, pregnant woman who would drive a few blocks, cry, and come home, ready to talk. He was wrong. Her mind, once preoccupied with guest lists and dinner menus, began functioning with a long, dormant, strategic precision. She pulled into a highway rest stop, the car engine rattling in the sudden silence. She pulled out her iPhone, Ricardo's face smiling at her from the lock screen, a picture from Italy last summer. A lie. With a trembling finger, she turned it off. Next, she opened the glove compartment and took out a small, cheap burner phone she had bought months ago. Not that she had expected this exact scenario, but she had seen the small signs of Ricardo's increasing detachment. His late nights at the office, the scent of that same perfume on his suit jacket weeks ago, which he had dismissed as a coworker. A quiet, nagging instinct had told her to prepare a life raft, a small act of self-preservation. She had also been quietly diverting small amounts from the household account into a separate bank account under her maiden name, Elena Castillo. It wasn't much by Ricardo's standards, just over 50,000 euros. But to her, in that moment, it was the keys to a new kingdom. She turned on the burner phone and made her first call. It rang 3 times before a calm, familiar voice answered. "Timoteo, it's Elena." Timoteo Garcia had been her best friend in college, a brilliant, kind-hearted history major who had become one of Madrid's most formidable divorce lawyers. They had drifted apart after she married Ricardo, a distance Elena now realized Ricardo had subtly orchestrated. "Elena, my God, are you all right?" he asked, his voice instantly tinged with concern. The dam broke. The carefully constructed calm shattered, and she began to sob, the ugly gulping sounds of a broken heart. "No, Tim, nothing is right. I came home. He was with someone. In our bed." She didn't have to say who. Timoteo was silent for a moment, letting her cry. There was no pity in his silence, only a deep, anchoring empathy. "Where are you?" "On the highway." "I don't know. I just left." "Okay, Elena, listen to me. Do not go to your parents' house. Do not go to a friend's house. He will look there first. Find a non-chain hotel, something small, and pay with cash. Your iPhone is off, right? Good. He can track it. The CRV has a GPS tracker linked to his security service. We need to get rid of it. Tomorrow, I will wire money from a client's trust account. You will use that cash to buy a used car, something discreet. In the meantime, I want you to go to 3 different ATMs at different banks and withdraw the largest amount of cash you can from that account you have. Then, stay hidden. Do not call anyone but me, and only from this phone. Are you with me?" His instructions were a lifeline in the storm. He wasn't just offering sympathy, he was giving her a plan. He was handing her back a sense of agency. "Yes, Timoteo, I'm with you." "Good girl," he said softly. "You're stronger than you think, Dory. He never deserved you." Meanwhile, back at the estate, Ricardo Navarro was growing impatient. After Sophia hastily dressed and left in a taxi with a slight smirk still on her face, Ricardo had paced the bedroom. He had called Elena's phone a dozen times, each call going straight to voicemail. He called her mother, who hadn't heard from her. He checked his car tracker, which showed her on the highway, heading west. "Damn it," he muttered. This was more than her usual temper tantrum. It was inconvenient. He had a major merger to close next week. He didn't have time for this domestic drama. He poured himself a glass of Macallan 25. The amber liquid did little to soothe his irritation. He looked around the silent, cavernous house. Elena's presence was everywhere. In the fresh flowers on the mantelpiece, the curated art on the walls, the stack of baby-naming books on the nightstand. Her absence was a void, and it unsettled him. He believed, with the unwavering arrogance of a man who had never faced real consequences, that this was a negotiation. She was raising the stakes. She would eventually call, demand an apology, a ridiculously expensive piece of jewelry, a trip to Paris. He would concede. She would come home, and things would return to normal. He would just have to be more discreet with Sophia in the future. He sent a text message, certain it would eventually be delivered. "Elena, this is insane. Come home. We need to be adults about this. Think about the baby." He had no idea that the Elena he was messaging no longer existed. Miles away, in a run-down motel room that smelled of stale cigarettes and disinfectant, the new Elena was methodically erasing herself. She withdrew cash, her face obscured by a hooded sweatshirt. She used the motel's patchy Wi-Fi on a disposable laptop to close all her social media accounts. She was a ghost, a specter. She lay on the lumpy bed, one hand resting protectively on her swollen abdomen. The baby moved, a soft reminder of the life that was entirely hers. The one thing Ricardo could not touch, could not control, could not devalue. He thought he had taken everything from her. As she lay there in the anonymous darkness, Elena Castillo realized she had nothing left to lose. And that made her, for the first time in a long time, powerful. Do you want to continue the story, focusing on the legal battle and the eventual birth of Leo? Chapter 3. The Cold Resolve. 3 months passed. The chaos of that scorching August settled into the quiet embers of cold, determined resolve. Ricardo's initial annoyance had transformed into a simmering rage. Elena hadn't returned home. She hadn't called. The texts and voicemails, first placating, then demanding, then threatening, went unanswered. Her credit cards were unused. Her bank account remained untouched after the initial cash withdrawals. She had disappeared as completely as smoke. He hired a private detective, a bulldog-faced ex-cop named Perez, with a steep price tag. Perez eventually found the abandoned CRV in a long-term parking lot at a bus station in Valencia. The trail went cold there. Perez assured Ricardo that women like Elena always resurface. "They need money, Señor Navarro. They get lonely. They make a mistake. We'll find her." Ricardo's life in this glass house continued, but its flawless surface now showed cracks. Sofia Vega had moved in, her vibrant modern possessions clashing with Elena's subtle, classic taste. She filled the closets with her designer clothes and the bathrooms with her expensive perfumes, but her presence felt like a performance. The light, musical laughter that Ricardo once found so alluring now irritated him. She was always on, ambitious, demanding, constantly angling for a more permanent position. The ring, the title of the next Mrs. Navarro. She was a transaction, and Ricardo was beginning to feel he had made a poor bargain. The easy, flowing comfort Elena had provided was gone, replaced by a constant, low-level tension. Building a new sanctuary far from the fragile opulence of the estate, Elena Castillo was breathing again. She had driven the used 2012 Toyota Camry she bought with cash to Granada, a city nestled in the misty Sierra Nevada mountains. She rented a small, furnished 2-bedroom apartment using her maiden name. She paid the first 6 months' rent in cash and introduced herself to her neighbors as Anna, a writer on a quiet retreat. Her life was simple, anonymous, and hers. She spent her days walking the winding mountain paths, the crisp autumn air filling her lungs. She discovered a small, independent bookstore where she spent hours reading, a cup of herbal tea cooling beside her. She joined a prenatal yoga class, not the sleek, competitive studio she had attended at the estate, but a warm, welcoming space filled with women of all shapes and sizes. Here, she was not Mrs. Ricardo Navarro. She was simply Elena, a woman about to become a mother. Her second room was slowly transforming into a nursery. She painted the walls a soft, buttery yellow herself, bought a simple wooden crib from a local artisan, and knitted a small, crooked blanket. Every object was chosen with love, not for its brand or its ability to impress. This life was authentic in a way her former life never had been. She spoke to Timoteo Garcia once a week from her burner phone. He was her anchor, her strategist. He had discreetly filed for a legal separation on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, serving Ricardo at his office. The move was designed to protect Elena's maternal rights and a portion of the marital assets without revealing her location. Ricardo had been blindsided. The filing, delivered by a stoic process server in the middle of a board meeting, was a declaration of war. He engaged his own lawyers, a team of sharks from one of Madrid's top firms, who filed a response, accusing Elena of being emotionally unstable and of kidnapping their unborn child. It was a vicious, calculated attack. "Don't let it get to you," Timoteo told her during one of their calls. Elena was sitting on her small balcony, watching the sun set behind the Veleta Peak, painting the sky with shades of purple and gold. It's standard procedure for a narcissist with a bottomless war chest. They attack, they defame, they try to control the narrative. But we have the truth on our side, Elena, and more importantly, we have a plan. The plan was patience. Elena was to remain hidden, establish residency in Andalusia, and build a stable life for her son. The moment the baby was born, they would amend the filing and sue for full custody and divorce on her terms. But the solitude, though healing, was also a breeding ground for fear. Some nights she woke up in a cold sweat, the memory of Ricardo's fury, a tangible presence in the room. She would imagine him finding her, his expensive car pulling up to her modest apartment building. The power he wielded, the money, the connections, felt like an insurmountable force. She would place a hand on her stomach, feeling her son's strong, steady movements, and draw strength from him. She was no longer fighting just for herself. She was fighting for him. Chapter 4. The hunter becomes the hunted. On a cold November afternoon, while researching pediatricians, an unfamiliar name popped up on a Granada mother's social media group. Sofia Vega has joined the group. Elena's blood ran cold. It had to be a coincidence. There could be hundreds, thousands of Sofia Vegas in the world. She clicked the profile. The photo was of a glamorous, smiling woman holding a champagne flute on a yacht. The profile listed her location as Madrid. But why join a group in Granada? Then she saw the post, made only an hour earlier. "Hi, ladies. My partner and I are thinking of relocating to your beautiful city. He's in finance and can work remotely anywhere. We're looking for a family-friendly neighborhood with good schools. Thanks in advance for any recommendations." It wasn't a coincidence. Did they know? Or were they close? The private detective must have found something. A digital breadcrumb. A whisper. They were hunting her. The quiet sanctuary she had so carefully built was no longer safe. The storm she had avoided was brewing again, right on her doorstep. The The digital intrusion felt like an invasion of her home. Elena stared at Sophia's smiling profile picture, the cheerful emoji at the end of her post, a sneering smile. It was a probe, a baited hook cast into the tranquil waters of her new life. They weren't in Granada yet, but they were testing the ground, trying to smoke her out. Panic surged through her, cold and sharp. Her first instinct was to flee again, pack her bags, jump in the car, and drive until the city was a dot in her rearview mirror. She stood up, her hands trembling, and paced the small living room. But where would she go? The world suddenly felt small, and Ricardo's reach seemed impossibly long. She clutched her belly, the weight of her son a steadying force. No, she couldn't run forever. Running was what he expected. It was the act of a victim. She had spent the last 3 months building a life, not a hiding place. She would not let them tear it down so easily. She grabbed the burner phone and called Timoteo. Her voice was tight with fear as she explained what she had found. "It's okay, Elena. Stay calm." Timoteo's voice was firm, a rock in her sea of anxiety. "This is a tactic. They don't have your address. They probably don't even know for sure you're in Granada. Perez, the detective, likely traced an IP signal or a data point to that geographical area. This is a fishing expedition. They're hoping you'll panic and make a mistake." "What do I do, Timoteo?" "Nothing," he said firmly. "You do absolutely nothing. You don't engage. You tighten your privacy settings and you get on with your life. But be vigilant. Lock your doors. Be aware of your surroundings. They've shown their hand. Now we wait." His confidence was a bomb, but a seed of terror had been planted. Every unfamiliar car that drove down her street, every look from a stranger at the grocery store, felt like a threat. The peace she had found in the mountains was gone, replaced by a constant, humming dread. Chapter 5. The Birth and the Counterattack. Weeks later, in the sterile, quiet environment of a hospital room in Granada, Elena's world shifted on its axis. After 12 hours of grueling labor, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Leo Castillo. Holding him for the first time, his small, wrinkled body warm against her chest, Elena felt a love so fierce and protective that it eclipsed every other emotion. The fear, the anger, the betrayal, it all faded into the background. Looking into her son's deep blue eyes, she knew she was no longer a victim. She was a mother, a warrior. The moment she was discharged from the hospital, she called Timoteo. "He's here, Tim," she said, her voice husky with emotion as she looked at Leo sleeping in his car seat. "He's perfect." "Congratulations, Elena," he said, and she could hear the genuine joy in his voice. "I am so happy for you. Are you ready?" "Yes," she said, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "Let's do this. Let's finish it." The next day, a process server walked for the second time into Ricardo Navarro's gleaming Madrid office. He handed a stunned Ricardo a new set of documents. They were not a response. They were an offense, a petition for divorce based on adultery, a request for an emergency hearing to establish paternity, and full legal and physical custody for Elena. Attached were a copy of Leo Castillo's birth certificate and a request for a restraining order, citing Ricardo's increasingly aggressive behavior and use of a private detective as harassment. Ricardo stared at the papers. His face turned a deep, mottled red. The name Leo Castillo leaped off the page. Castillo. She hadn't given him his name. She had erased him completely. This was not the scared, emotional woman who had run out in the rain. This was a strategic, calculated assault. She wasn't hiding in a corner, waiting to be found. She was attacking. The imbalance of power he had relied on his entire life had just been reversed. And for the first time, Ricardo Navarro felt a genuine pang of fear. Would you like to conclude the story with the legal battle, the final confrontation, and Elena's ultimate victory and peace? Chapter 6. The King Without Clothes. The legal documents landed on Ricardo's antique mahogany desk like a declaration of war. Full custody, restraining order, harassment. The audacity was breathtaking. He had spent a fortune on the best legal team in Madrid, and they had been outmaneuvered by Timoteo Garcia, a man he vaguely recalled from Elena's college photos as a soft-spoken intellectual. "This is an ambush," he growled into the phone at his lead counsel, a shrewd corporate lawyer named Marcos Toro. "How did they beat us to this? I pay you 700 euros an hour to be proactive." "They were patient, Ricardo," Marcos said, his voice a calm counterpoint to Ricardo's rage. "They waited until the child was born in Andalusia, establishing jurisdiction there. It's a clever move. It forces you to fight on their turf. And this claim of adultery, do you have any exposure there?" "It's a he said, she said situation," Ricardo lied, his words tasting like ash. "I hope so," Marcos said dryly. "Because if they have evidence, this custody battle becomes exponentially harder for you. The judge won't look kindly on it." Ricardo's legal strategy was to paint Elena as an unstable, vengeful woman who had fled their marriage in a hormonal rage and maliciously taken a father from his son. They filed motions demanding a psychological evaluation for Elena and immediate DNA testing to establish paternity, framing it as a necessary step due to her erratic behavior. The calm before the storm. In Granada, Elena read the filings with a knot of ice in her stomach. The words were a vile caricature of the truth, twisting her desperate act of self-preservation into a portrait of mental illness. "This is what they do," Timoteo assured her over the phone. He had flown down to meet with her and her sharp, empathetic local family attorney, Sarah. "They throw mud, hoping some will stick. But we have something they don't, the truth. And we have evidence." The evidence was simple and devastating. The day Elena left, she had instinctively gone back upstairs. In her daze, she had seen Ricardo's laptop open on his desk. On the screen was his calendar, open to that very day's entry. 2 p.m. Sofia. But it wasn't the single appointment that was damning. It was the fact that it was a recurring weekly appointment, stretching back 6 months. With a shaking hand, she had used her old iPhone to take a clear, time-stamped photograph of the screen. It wasn't just a one-off mistake, as he had claimed. It was a long-term, calculated affair. "We save this for now," Timoteo advised. "We don't play our best card at the start of the game. Let him build his fortress of lies. We'll tear it down when it matters most." The Vista, the preliminary hearing, was scheduled to take place via video conference. A cold, impersonal forum for a war so deeply personal. Elena sat at Sarah's polished office table, Leo sleeping soundly in a car seat at her feet. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair neatly pulled back. She looked serene, a stark contrast to the unhinged woman described in Ricardo's legal filings. On the large screen, she saw him for the first time in nearly a year. He looked thinner, his face etched with lines of stress and anger. The hearing was a brutal, clinical dissection of their life. Ricardo's counsel painted her as a flighty, emotional homemaker who had abandoned a loving, supportive husband. When it was Sarah's turn, she spoke with quiet, methodical precision. "Your Honor, my client, Ms. Castillo, did not abandon her marriage. She fled a toxic and unsafe environment for herself and her unborn child. She left her home on August 28th of last year after discovering her husband, Mr. Navarro, in the marital bed with his subordinate, Ms. Sofia Vega." Ricardo flinched on the screen, a barely perceptible tightening of his jaw. Marcos Toro immediately objected. "Objection, Your Honor. These are unsubstantiated, inflammatory accusations. On the contrary, Your Honor, Sarah continued softly, we have proof that Mr. Navarro was involved in a long-term affair with Ms. Vega, evidence we are prepared to present at trial. We, the judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, looked over her glasses. Mr. Navarro, is it true that Ms. Vega is currently residing with you in the marital home? Ricardo spoke through clenched teeth. Yes, Your Honor. She is a colleague who was in a difficult living situation. I was offering support. The lie was so pathetic, so transparent, that the judge's expression remained unreadable. The court orders DNA testing to confirm paternity immediately. A guardian ad litem will be appointed to represent the child's best interests. Ms. Castillo retains temporary full physical custody. Mr. Navarro, given the circumstances and distance, you are granted 2 hours of supervised virtual visitation per week. We will reconvene in 90 days to review the findings. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. They hadn't fallen for his lies. As the video conference ended, Ricardo's image lingered on the screen for a moment before snapping off. For the first time, his mask of controlled fury slipped, replaced by a look of pure, undiluted shock. He had used his power and money to bully and control everyone in his life. He had just discovered they were useless against the simple, unassailable weapon of the truth. The point of no return, the 90 days leading up to the next hearing, were a brutal war of attrition. Ricardo's legal team flooded Timoteo and Sarah with discovery requests and depositions, a strategy designed to wear Elena down emotionally and financially. But Timoteo had prepared her. Elena's life was an open book, and it was a book filled with quiet competence and stability. The mud Ricardo threw refused to stick. Meanwhile, the court-appointed guardian ad litem, an attentive and experienced social worker named Ms. Pardo, conducted her investigation. She interviewed Elena extensively in her small, sunny apartment, observing her gentle, attentive interactions with Leo. The home was modest, but clean, safe, and full of love. Her video conference with Ricardo was another story. He tried to charm her, presenting himself as a heartbroken father, desperate to be part of his son's life. But Ms. Pardo was trained to see past such performances. The breaking point arrived 1 week before the final hearing. Timoteo called Elena. It's time, he said. We need a capstone, something to make their entire case crumble. Elena knew what he meant. For years, as the Navarro household manager, she had been responsible for organizing all their financial documents. One year, she had noticed a bizarre, recurring bank transfer of 100,000 euros made every quarter to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands called Navarro Strategic Investments. Ricardo had been vague and angry when she asked about it. It's complex investment stuff, Elena. You wouldn't understand. Don't worry about it. Sensing his agitation, she hadn't pressed, but she had made a copy of the statements, filing them away with a vague sense of unease. Timoteo's forensic accountants had been silently digging. Ricardo has been systematically hiding marital assets in that offshore account for the last 5 years, Timoteo explained. It's a classic case of financial fraud against a spouse, but it's worse than that. The source of the funds is questionable. It appears to be linked to an insider trading investigation the SEC has been sniffing around for the last year. Timoteo Garcia requested a settlement conference with Ricardo and his lawyer. They met in a neutral conference room in Cordoba. Elena was not present. Timoteo was her sword and shield. Timoteo laid it out. He presented the calendar photograph, proving the long-term nature of the affair. He presented the scathing report from the guardian ad litem. And then he slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a bank statement from Navarro Strategic Investments. Ricardo's face went white. Marcos Toro glanced at the statement, then at his client. His eyes narrowed. "Here is our settlement offer," Timoteo said calmly. "Elena gets full legal and physical custody of Leo. Ricardo gets supervised virtual visits and 4 supervised in-person visits in Granada per year at his own cost. He will pay a substantial fixed amount of child support until Leo turns 21. In exchange for his signature on this agreement, that file," he tapped the bank statement, "remains a private matter between us." It was checkmate. Marcos Toro looked at Ricardo, whose arrogant facade had completely crumbled. He was a cornered animal. "Take the deal, Ricardo," the lawyer advised in a low voice. Ricardo left the conference room a broken man. He drove back to the estate in a daze. When he walked through the front door, Sophia was there, glass of wine in hand. "Well, what happened?" "She won. She won everything," he said, the fight gone out of him. He looked at Sophia, at the pink dressing room down the hall, at the life he had chosen. It was all a cheap imitation, an empty prize. Sophia stared at his defeat. She had hitched her wagon to a star, and the star was falling out of the sky. There would be no ring, no Mita Navarro title, no access to the unlimited funds she had dreamed of. He was damaged goods. Without a word, she turned and walked upstairs. An hour later, she came down with 2 suitcases. She didn't look at him as she walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" he asked, the question devoid of emotion. "Don't worry about me," she said, her voice hard. "I always land on my feet." She walked out the door, leaving him alone in the vast, silent glass house. The laughter was finally gone. The quiet victory. The divorce was finalized on a crisp, clear day in early spring. The paperwork, signed and sealed, felt less like an ending and more like a quiet, formal beginning. Elena sat in Sarah's office, the pen feeling light in her hand. There was no triumph, no desire for vengeance, only a deep sense of peace. She hadn't destroyed Ricardo. His own choices had done that. She had simply refused to be a victim of his ruin. The settlement was more than generous. It wasn't about the money itself, but what it represented. Security, independence, and the freedom to give Leo the life he deserved. A life built on a foundation of honesty and love, not glass and lies. A few weeks later, Ricardo came for his first supervised visit. The meeting was at a bright, cheerful family center in Granada. When Elena walked in, holding Leo, she saw Ricardo waiting. He looked diminished. The custom suit hung a little looser. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a hesitant uncertainty. He looked at Leo, now nearly 1, a happy, babbling baby with a shock of dark hair like his father's, and Elena's calm blue eyes. Ricardo's face, for the first time, showed a flash of something beyond anger or self-pity. It was raw, painful regret. He's beautiful, Elena," he stammered. His voice choked. "His name is Leo," she corrected him, gently, but firmly. She handed Leo to him. Ricardo held his son with an awkwardness that broke her heart a little. He had missed everything. The first smile, the first laugh, the sleepless nights, the small, miraculous moments that forged the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. He was a stranger to his own son. She watched for a few minutes as he awkwardly tried to play with Leo. She saw the ghost of the man she had once loved and the man he had become. He was no longer a monster in her mind, just a sad, flawed man who had broken the most precious things in his life. She walked up to him before leaving. "I hope you can be a good father to him, Ricardo. He deserves it." He looked at her, his eyes full of a galaxy of unsaid things, apologies, questions, regrets. "I know," he whispered. "I'm sorry, Elena, for everything." The apology, when it finally came, felt distant, like a message in a bottle that had reached the shore long after the ship had sailed. She no longer needed it. "Goodbye, Ricardo," she said, and walked out into the sunshine, feeling nothing but lightness. Her redemption wasn't in his fall, but in her own ascent. She bought a small house with a wide porch and a view of the mountains. She started a small online art consulting business, helping clients build their own collections. Her old passion, so long dormant, bloomed again. Her life filled with the quiet joys she had once craved. Leo's laughter echoing through the house, the smell of paint and old books, the constant comforting presence of her good friends from yoga class, the breathtaking beauty of a mountain sunset. She had walked out of the glass house with nothing but the clothes on her back and the child in her womb. She had been stripped of her name, her home, her security, but in losing everything, she had found herself. She was not Senora Elena Navarro, the millionaire's wife. She was Elena Castillo, a mother, an entrepreneur, a survivor. She had faced the storm and emerged on the other side, not just intact, but stronger, more authentic, and finally, breathtakingly free. The story of Elena's betrayal and redemption is now complete. Do you want to start a new story, or would you like to revisit any aspect of this narrative? The stolen name and the snapshot of truth. Under the glittering chandeliers of the Ritz-Carlton, Victor Vasquez's kiss with Zara Mendez was supposed to be the sweetest moment of the night, proof of 8 years of perfect marriage. But just moments later, that kiss shattered. Hundreds of Orlando's high society gasped as Zara, no longer the deceived wife, but the queen of vengeance, held up a gold clutch. Inside was not lipstick, but a photograph. That picture didn't just capture her husband and her best friend, kneeling and weeping. It captured how they had spent a year cheating, checking into hotels under the very name Mr. and Mrs. Vasquez. That night, she didn't just discard her wedding ring. She burned down an entire empire built on lies and turned her humiliation into an ovation that lasted 5 years. See how one betrayed woman rose to become a legend. The story, the most elegant revenge in Orlando. The silence in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was so dense it could be cut with a knife. 500 of Orlando's high society held their breath as Zara Mendez, radiant in her cobalt blue gown, held up a photograph that would shake the foundations of 2 marriages and forever ruin the reputations of 2 of the night's most prominent guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zara announced, her voice ringing like crystal through the ballroom. "For 8 years, I believed I was married to an honest man. Tonight, you will discover, at the same time as I confirm, who Victor Vasquez truly is, and who my best friend, Chloe Morales, truly is." At her feet, her husband wept on his knees like a chastised child, his tuxedo crumpled, tears streaming down his once proud face. A few feet away, her supposed best friend since high school trembled in terror in her pink dress, knowing her life, as she knew it, was about to end forever. Social photographers' cameras began to fire like machine guns. Cell phones were raised throughout the room to record the moment that would go viral in a matter of hours. And Zara, the woman who had arrived at that party as a betrayed wife, was about to leave it as the most applauded heroine in Florida's social history. How did we reach this explosive moment that would change 3 lives forever? To understand it, we need to go back 6 months and discover the full story of the most scandalous betrayal and the most elegant revenge Orlando had ever witnessed. Part 1. The Gathering Storm. The Orlando sun shone brightly over the elegant streets of the financial district, where Zara Mendez walked with that natural grace that had always attracted admiring glances and silent envy. Her golden blonde hair moved gently with the breeze, and her sky-blue eyes reflected a tranquility that would soon be tested. At 32, Zara had built a life many would consider perfect. Married to Victor Vasquez, a successful real estate entrepreneur, they lived in a colonial mansion in Winter Park, surrounded by gardens she herself designed with love and dedication. Their 8-year marriage had been, until recently, the example many couples wanted to follow. "Hey Zara, have you seen the new French restaurant that opened on Park Avenue?" The sing-song voice of Chloe Morales interrupted her thoughts as she approached with that smile Zara had known since high school. Chloe had been her classmate at the exclusive St. Patrick's School in Mexico City before both families moved to Orlando following the business opportunities Florida offered. Since then, they had maintained a friendship Zara believed was sincere, never suspecting that behind that facade of camaraderie hid a sick obsession. "Oh, Chloe, no, I haven't had time to go out much lately," Zara replied, noticing how her friend wore a dress almost identical to the one she had worn last week, only in a different color. It was a pattern that constantly repeated. Chloe always tried to imitate her style, her way of speaking, even the way she wore her hair. "Well, we should go together, don't you think? We could call the guys to join us," Chloe suggested, with a smile that didn't reach her green eyes. What Zara didn't know was that those group outings had been carefully orchestrated by Chloe. Since high school, when Zara started dating Victor, Chloe had felt that pang of envy that morphed into obsession. Victor was handsome, charismatic, and above all, he had chosen Zara. That was something Chloe could not stand. "Sure, that sounds great," Zara agreed, unaware that those innocent outings had become the perfect stage for her husband and her best friend to weave a web of lies behind her back. That afternoon, while preparing dinner in her spacious Carrara marble kitchen, Zara recalled the early days of her relationship with Victor. They had been so young, so in love. He courted her for months in college, writing romantic letters and showing up with flowers at the most unexpected moments. "My beautiful queen," he used to tell her, "you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." But Victor had one flaw Zara had overlooked in her youth. He was a natural conquistador. His ego fed on admiring female glances, and while he initially settled for innocent flirtations, over the years, that need for validation had become more dangerous. When Chloe began casting glances charged with intent during social gatherings, Victor couldn't resist. It was the perfect challenge, his wife's best friend, someone who knew all her secrets, someone who desired him precisely because he was Zara's. The phone rang, interrupting Zara's memories. It was Victor. "Love, I'm going to be late again. I have a meeting with some very important clients from the north." He lied shamelessly, while he was actually heading to the apartment Chloe had rented specifically for their clandestine meetings. "Again?" Zara couldn't hide the frustration in her voice. "Victor, we haven't spent a night together in 3 weeks. I know, my life, but this business is going to set us up very well financially. I promise the weekend will be just for us." Another lie. That weekend, Chloe had planned a trip to Miami Beach with the excuse of visiting a cousin, and Victor already had his alibi ready, a supposed golf tournament with his partners. Zara hung up the phone, with a strange feeling in her chest. Lately, Victor had changed. He showered more often, had completely updated his wardrobe, and always had his cell phone glued to his hand, guarding it like a national treasure. That night, while dining alone in the dining room, which had once been filled with laughter and intimate conversations, Zara felt the coming loneliness for the first time. The walls of her beautiful house were starting to feel like a golden prison, and an inner voice whispered truths she wasn't ready to hear yet. On the other side of the city, Victor and Chloe indulged in their guilty passion, building each encounter on the foundation of deceit and betrayal. For Chloe, every kiss was a victory over Zara. For Victor, every caress fed his sick ego. Neither imagined that their castle of lies would soon collapse in the most spectacular way possible. The storm was approaching, and Zara, unknowingly, was about to face the greatest test of her life, one that would lead her to discover an inner strength she didn't even know she possessed. Part 2. The Evidence and the Plan. Orlando mornings had that magical quality Zara had grown to love during her years in Florida. But lately, not even that natural beauty could ward off the sense of unease that grew in her chest like a poisonous plant. "Good morning, Mrs. Zara." Maria, her trusted housekeeper, greeted her, serving freshly brewed Colombian coffee. "Is Mr. Victor not having breakfast?" "He left early again," Zara murmured, trying to maintain a casual tone. "He says he has many work commitments." Maria, a wise woman who had worked for wealthy families all her life, exchanged a knowing look with Zara. She had seen enough marriages to recognize the warning signs, but she knew it wasn't her place to comment. Zara's cell phone vibrated with a message from Chloe. "Friend, are you coming to yoga class today? I have something super important to tell you." Zara sighed. Chloe's constant invitations had become more frequent lately, always with that artificial urgency that characterized those who hide something. However, the need for female company led her to accept. "Okay, I'll see you there at 10. The yoga studio was located in an elegant Winter Park commercial complex, frequented by successful professionals and business wives. Zara arrived punctually, as always, and found Chloe already settled on her mat, wearing a branded athletic outfit that, curiously, was very similar to the one Zara had worn last week. "Zara, I'm so glad you came." Chloe approached with that exaggerated effusiveness Zara now recognized as pure performance. "How is Victor? He looks so busy lately, the poor thing." It was a seemingly innocent question, but Zara detected something strange in the tone. A familiarity that shouldn't exist, considering Chloe only saw Victor at social gatherings. "Yes, very busy," Zara replied, studying her friend's face. "Why do you ask? Have you seen him somewhere?" A microsecond of panic crossed Chloe's eyes before she recovered. No. I was just asking because David mentioned he had seen his car downtown several times, and you know how my husband is with gossip." Another carefully constructed lie. David, Chloe's husband, was a shy, reserved man who rarely left his accounting office. He would never comment on other men's movements. During the class, Zara couldn't concentrate on the poses. Her mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't wanted to see. Victor's constant nights out, his new obsession with clothes and the gym, the way he avoided her gaze during intimate conversations. And now, Chloe's strange questions. "Hey, Chloe," Zara said as they headed to the parking lot. "What was that important thing you wanted to tell me?" Chloe blushed slightly. It was the first time Zara had seen her genuinely nervous. "Oh, yes, well, David and I are thinking of renovating the house, and I wanted to ask you for the name of your decorator." Another lie. Zara had decorated her own house without professional help. Chloe knew that perfectly well. That afternoon, Zara decided to do something she had never done in 8 years of marriage: discreetly check Victor's things. She wasn't a naturally jealous woman, but the signs had become too obvious to ignore. She started with his study, a room he considered his private sanctuary. Among the business books and specialized real estate magazines, she found something that chilled her: a receipt from an exclusive Park Avenue jeweler. The date was 2 weeks ago, and the amount was considerable. Why would he buy jewelry without telling her? Their anniversary was 4 months away. With trembling hands, Zara continued searching. In the inner pocket of one of his jackets, she found another receipt. This time, from a boutique hotel in downtown Orlando. A room reserved for Mr. and Mrs. Vasquez on a date when she had been home, alone. Preparing a romantic dinner, he canceled at the last minute for work. The world began to spin around her. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, forming an image that tore her apart inside. Her husband not only had a mistress, but he paraded her around Orlando using her last name as if she were his legitimate wife. That night, when Victor came home near midnight smelling of perfume that wasn't hers, Zara was waiting for him, in the living room with a glass of red wine and a serene expression that hid the internal storm. "How was your day, love?" he asked, kissing her on the forehead with the same naturalness with which he had lied for months. "Interesting," she replied, looking him directly in the eyes. "Very interesting." Victor didn't detect the emotional charge behind that simple word. His arrogance prevented him from imagining that his wife, the sweet and trusting woman he had married, might be starting to unravel his web of lies. "I'm happy to hear that, my queen. I had a grueling day. Clients are very demanding lately." Zara nodded silently, sipping her wine while observing the man who had once been the love of her life. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She wouldn't confront Victor yet. She needed more information, more evidence, but above all, she needed to prepare emotionally for what would come next. The silent war had begun, and Zara was determined to win it with dignity. In her secret apartment, Chloe took off the pearl necklace Victor had given her that afternoon, the same one that appeared on the receipt Zara had found. Unbeknownst to them, both women were preparing for a battle that would define the rest of their lives. A battle where the truth would be the most powerful weapon. Part 3. The gathering of ammunition, the following days, unfolded like a slow-motion film for Zara. Every gesture from Victor, every word from Chloe, every detail that previously went unnoticed now took on a sinister meaning. She had developed an almost supernatural ability to maintain her composure, while her inner world crumbled piece by piece. "My love, I have the golf tournament at Bay Hill on Saturday," Victor announced during breakfast, without looking up from the newspaper. "Several important hotel businessmen will be there. It could be very good for business." Zara smiled with that icy serenity she had perfected. "How nice! And who's going?" The question was seemingly innocent, but Victor tensed. Well, several acquaintances. Carlos Mendoza, the Gutierrez brothers group. You know, the usual people. Lie number 1000. Zara had discreetly called Carlos Mendoza the day before, under the pretext of inviting him to dinner, and he had mentioned he would be out of town all weekend, visiting his mother in Tampa. "Sounds perfect, my life. I'll take the opportunity to do some pending things," Zara replied, while inwardly meticulously planning her next move. That same morning, after Victor left for the office, Zara visited her friend Sandra, a private investigator she had met in college, who now had a thriving agency in Orlando. Sandra was a shrewd woman, with a penetrating gaze, who had helped many wives uncover painful truths. "Zara, my dear, what a lovely surprise." Sandra greeted her in her modern financial district office. "To what do I owe the honor of your visit?" "Sandra, I need your help." Zara got straight to the point. "I believe Victor is cheating on me, and I need to know for sure." Sandra's expression immediately turned professional. For the next 40 minutes, Zara shared all her findings, the receipts, the behavior changes, the lies about nights out, and her suspicions about Chloe. "Chloe Morales, the blonde who's always with you at social events?" Sandra frowned. "Oh, Zara, that woman always gave me a bad feeling. I've seen her in several places acting strangely. Strange how? As if she were another person. As if she were trying to be you, but a cheap version." Those words struck Zara's heart like a hammer blow. A lifetime of friendship since adolescence, and Chloe had been a facade, an actress playing the part of the best friend while plotting her betrayal. "I need concrete proof, Sandra. I can't act on mere suspicion." "Give me a week," Sandra promised. "I'll get you everything you need." The plan was set in motion with military precision. Sandra assigned 2 of her best investigators, to discreetly follow both Victor and Chloe. The photos began to arrive via encrypted email starting Tuesday. First image: Victor and Chloe, having lunch at an Italian restaurant in Lake Mary, their hands intertwined across the table like an in-love couple. Second image: leaving a boutique hotel in downtown Orlando together, Chloe carrying the exact same Chanel bag Zara had bought last month. Third image: passionately kissing in a shopping center parking lot, oblivious to the world around them. Each photograph was like a stab wound, but Zara studied them with the coldness of a surgeon. Her pain was slowly transforming into something more powerful, a steely determination to reclaim her dignity and her life. On Friday night, Chloe called her with a honeyed voice. "Zara, my love, do you want to go shopping tomorrow? David is going to an accounting seminar in Tampa, and I'll be super bored." Another perfectly synchronized lie. David would be in Tampa, yes, but Chloe was planning to spend the weekend in Miami Beach with Victor, in the presidential suite of the hotel they had booked under false names. "I can't, Chloe. I have plans with my sister," Zara lied smoothly. "Oh, what a shame. Well, maybe next time. I love you very much, friend." "And I love you too," Zara replied, feeling those words turn to ashes in her mouth. That night, as Victor packed his golf bag, which actually contained beach clothes and a swimsuit, Zara made the most important decision of her life. She would not only confront her unfaithful husband and her false friend, but she would do it in the most spectacular way possible. The annual Orlando High Society Gala would be in 2 weeks. It was the event of the year where all the city's elite gathered to show off their status and connections. Zara knew neither Victor nor Chloe would dare to miss it. It was too important for their egos and their businesses. What they didn't know was that Zara had been planning her appearance at that gala for days. It wouldn't just be a confrontation. It would be a declaration of war, a reclaiming of her dignity, and the beginning of her new life. Sandra delivered a manila envelope full of photographs, documents, and irrefutable evidence of the affair that had already lasted a full year. "Zara," her friend told her in a serious voice, "what you are about to see is going to hurt a lot. Are you sure you want to go ahead with this?" Zara took the envelope with steady hands, more sure than I've ever been in my life. That night, under the light of her desk lamp, Zara reviewed every piece of evidence, every detail of the betrayal. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were no longer the tears of a broken woman. They were tears of liberation, of a woman who finally saw the complete truth and was ready to act. On Saturday, while Victor and Chloe enjoyed their stolen romantic getaway in Miami Beach, Zara visited the most exclusive beauty salon on Park Avenue and commissioned the most spectacular dress she had ever seen. A cobalt blue design that enhanced her eyes and figure, a masterpiece that would make her shine like never before. The countdown had begun. In 2 weeks, in Orlando's most elegant ballroom, 3 lives would change forever. Part 4. The Showdown at the Ritz-Carlton. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Orlando shone with the elegance of a European palace. Crystal chandeliers cast golden reflections over the sea of ball gowns and impeccable tuxedos. The crème de la crème of Orlando society had gathered for the most exclusive event of the year, unaware that they would witness a drama that would be remembered for decades. Zara took one last look at herself in her suite's makeup mirror. The cobalt blue dress fit her figure like a second skin, enhancing every curve with sublime elegance. Her blonde hair was styled in a sophisticated French twist, and her blue eyes shone with an intensity she hadn't shown in months. Around her neck, her grandmother's diamond necklace completed an ensemble that radiated power and dignity. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Zara," said Maria, who had insisted on helping her get ready. "It's going to be a very special night." "Yes," Zara murmured, touching the small golden clutch that contained the most compromising photographs. Very special. Sandra arrived punctually at 7 to accompany her. As a private investigator, she knew the importance of having reliable witnesses at crucial moments. "Are you ready for this?" she asked Zara as they got into the elegant Mercedes-Benz that would take them to the hotel. "I've been ready all my life. I just didn't know it," Zara replied, with a serenity that surprised even Sandra. The plan was simple, but devastating. Zara would make her entrance as she always had, elegant, smiling, the perfect wife of the successful Victor Vasquez. She would greet acquaintances, chat amiably with the other business wives, and wait for the perfect moment. Victor and Chloe had arrived separately, as they had been doing for the past few months. He looked impeccable in his Italian tuxedo, working the room with that conqueror's smile that had once made Zara fall in love. Chloe wore a pale pink dress, which was an almost exact copy of the one Zara had worn at the previous year's gala, only in a different color. Even on the night of her biggest betrayal, Chloe couldn't help but imitate her victim. "Zara, my love!" Chloe approached with that false effusiveness Zara now recognized as pure performance. "You look divine. That dress looks spectacular on you." "Thank you, Chloe. You look very familiar too," Zara replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Victor joined the group, kissing his wife on the cheek with the same naturalness with which he had been lying for a year. "My beautiful queen," he murmured against her ear. "You are the most beautiful woman at this party." Zara felt nauseous, but maintained her composure. "How gallant! How was the golf tournament this weekend?" "Excellent, my life. We won several important clients," Victor lied without blinking, unaware that Zara had photographs of him and Chloe on Miami Beach during those very same dates. The orchestra began to play, and couples headed to the dance floor. Zara watched from her table as Victor invited several ladies to dance, always the perfect gentleman in public. Chloe moved around the ballroom as if she were the queen of the party, subtly flirting with married men and enjoying the attention. At 10:30, the moment Zara had been waiting for arrived. The master of ceremonies announced the traditional anniversary waltz, where couples would dance according to the years they had been married. "Dear guests, we now invite all married couples to the dance floor. We will begin with those newly married for less than a year." The couples gradually left the floor as more years of marriage were mentioned. When they reached 8 years, Zara and Victor remained among the few couples still dancing. "My love," Victor whispered, holding her in his arms. "Thank you for all these wonderful years. You are the love of my life." The words fell like knives into Zara's heart, but her moment had arrived. With a grace that surprised even herself, she separated from Victor in the middle of the dance floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zara said, her voice clear and strong, commanding the attention of the entire ballroom. "I would like to share something very important with you all on this special evening." A murmur of confusion spread through the room. Victor looked at her with growing panic, and Chloe had gone white as a sheet. "For 8 years, I believed I was married to an honest and loyal man," Zara continued, her voice gaining power with every word. "I believed I had a true friend who supported me every step of the way. Tonight, I want to show you the reality of what happens when you trust the wrong people." With elegant precision, Zara opened the golden clutch and began to display the photographs Sandra had obtained. The images were projected onto the ballroom screens, thanks to a technician Sandra had discreetly hired. "This is my husband, Victor Vasquez, on the day he was supposedly at a golf tournament," Zara announced, as the first photograph showed Victor and Chloe kissing. "And this is my best friend since high school, Chloe Morales, who apparently decided she wanted everything that was mine, including my husband." The ballroom erupted in murmurs of shock and indignation. Social photographers' cameras began to fire, capturing every moment of what would become the biggest scandal in Orlando's social history. Victor ran toward Zara in desperation. "Zara, please! We can talk about this privately. Don't make a scene! A scene!" Zara laughed with crystalline bitterness. "Like the scene you've been making for a year in Orlando hotels with my supposed best friend?" Chloe tried to slip toward the exit, but Sandra and two of her investigators blocked her way. There was no escape for either of them. "Zara, please!" Chloe cried, tears streaming down her perfectly applied makeup. "I can explain everything. It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like." Zara showed another photograph of them leaving the hotel with luggage. "Then what exactly does it look like when my husband and my best friend check in as Mr. and Mrs. Vasquez at hotels across the city?" The audience began to applaud. The high society women, who had witnessed many similar betrayals in their social circles, recognized Zara's courage. By publicly exposing the infidelity instead of suffering in silence, she reclaimed her narrative. Victor dropped to his knees in front of Zara, sobbing desperately. "Forgive me, my love. It was a terrible mistake. She seduced me. You are the love of my life." "That's a lie," Chloe shouted, losing her composure completely. "He told me he didn't love you anymore, that he was going to divorce you to be with me." The betrayal deepened further. Not only had they had an affair, but they had planned to completely destroy Zara's life. With a dignity that left everyone breathless, Zara removed her wedding ring and dropped it onto the floor next to Victor. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced in a firm voice, "I present to you my ex-husband, Victor Vasquez, and my ex-friend, Chloe Morales. May they enjoy the rest of their lives together, because from this moment on, they are no longer my problem." The ballroom erupted in applause. Women stood up, cheering Zara as if she were a victorious heroine. Men applauded respectfully, recognizing the class and dignity with which she had handled a devastating situation. Zara walked toward the exit with her head held high, while Victor continued crying on the floor, and Chloe was consoled by a few acquaintances who took pity on her. The night of truth was over, but for Zara, a new life was about to begin. Part 5. The Renacer Foundation. 6 months after the scandal that shook Orlando's high society, Zara Mendez walked through the gardens of the Winter Park Museum of Art with a confidence that radiated from the depths of her being. The morning sun caressed her face, and for the first time in years, she felt completely free. The aftermath of that memorable night had been a whirlwind of changes, all positive. The scandal videos had gone viral on social media, turning Zara into a symbol of female dignity and empowerment. Women across the country contacted her to thank her for having the courage to publicly expose the infidelity, inspiring them to take control of their own lives. "Zara, there you are." The male voice pulled her out of her thoughts. She turned to find Kian Herrera, the most respected landscape architect in Florida, walking toward her with that genuine smile that had won her over. Slowly, over the past few months, Kian was everything Victor was not. Where her ex-husband was superficial and arrogant, Kian was deep and humble. Where Victor constantly sought the admiration of other women, Kian had eyes only for Zara. At 35, he was a man who had built his reputation on genuine talent and solid values. "Sorry I'm late," Kian apologized, gently kissing her cheek. "I had a last-minute call about the botanical garden project." "Don't worry," Zara smiled, feeling that familiar warmth only Kian could ignite. "I was enjoying the tranquility." They had met 3 months after the scandal, when Zara decided to completely renovate her home gardens as a symbol of her new life. Kian arrived with a proposal that would not only transform her outdoor space, but would reveal an emotional connection neither of them expected. "How is the design of your new office going?" Kian asked, as they walked together along the path lined with azaleas. Zara smiled proudly. After the divorce, she decided to channel all her energy into something she had always dreamed of: opening her own interior design consultancy. The contacts she had made over the years as a businesswife, combined with her natural talent and the unexpected publicity from the scandal, had resulted in a thriving business from day one. Perfectly. I already have 3 important projects for next month, Zara replied. It seems Orlando women want me to help them renovate their lives along with their homes. They both laughed. Zara had discovered she had a natural gift for helping other women find their own identity through design, especially those who, like her, had lost their sense of self in toxic marriages. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Victor and Chloe's lives had taken a very different turn. The scandal had ruined Victor's reputation in Orlando's business world. Clients had canceled contracts, partners had cut ties, and his real estate company had gone bankrupt in less than 4 months. Chloe, for her part, had lost all her social circles. High society wives had completely excluded her, and her own marriage to David had fallen apart when he discovered the full truth about the affair. Now Victor and Chloe lived together in a small apartment on the outskirts of Orlando, struggling to rebuild their lives on the ashes of the lies they had constructed. The passion that had once blinded them turned into mutual resentment, each blaming the other for the destruction of their previous lives. Back at the museum, Zara and Kian stopped in front of an exhibition of contemporary paintings. One of the works showed a woman emerging from turbulent waters toward a luminous sky. "It reminds me of you," Kian murmured, gently taking Zara's hand. She looked at him with those blue eyes that now shone with a renewed light. "Why?" "Because you are the bravest woman I know. Not everyone has the courage to expose their pain in public, to reclaim their dignity." Zara felt tears of gratitude in her eyes. They weren't tears of pain like the ones she had shed for months, but tears of joy for having found someone who truly valued her. "Kian," she said, turning to face him, "there's something I want to tell you. I'm ready to love again." Those words floated in the air like a promise of new beginnings. Kian smiled and kissed her softly, a kiss full of respect, admiration, and genuine love. 2 weeks later, Zara's phone rang in her new office. It was Victor, his voice broken with desperation. "Zara, please, I need to talk to you. I'm ruined. I lost everything. Chloe and I aren't working out. I realized I made the biggest mistake of my life. You were my real life. She was just a fantasy." Zara listened in silence, feeling a mix of pity and liberation. The man who was once capable of controlling his emotions now sounded completely defeated. "Victor," she said in a calm voice, "I'm sorry things didn't work out as you expected with Chloe, but that's no longer my responsibility. Please, Zara, we can try again. I've changed. I learned my lesson." "Yes, I'm sure you learned a lesson," Zara replied. "But I learned mine too. I learned that I deserve someone who values me from day one, not someone who only appreciates me after losing me." There was a painful silence on the other end of the line. "Is there someone else?" Victor asked, his voice cracking. Zara smiled, thinking of Kian and the marriage proposal he had made the night before during a romantic dinner at their favorite restaurant. "Yes," she replied. "I think I always deserved to be loved." "Zara, please." "Goodbye, Victor. I wish you the best in your new life." Zara hung up the phone and looked out the window of her office toward the bright future that stretched before her. In 3 months, she would marry Kian in an intimate ceremony, in the gardens he had specially designed for her. It would be a new beginning, built on solid foundations of mutual respect and true love. That afternoon, Zara reflected on the extraordinary journey she had lived. The betrayal, which she once thought would destroy her, had become the force that freed her. She had lost an unfaithful husband and a false friend. But she had gained something much more valuable: her own identity, her dignity intact, and a true love that valued her for who she really was. The woman who had entered that gala 6 months ago was very different from the one now planning her future with renewed confidence. The first had been a wife who lived to please others. The second was a woman who had learned to value herself. In the small apartment on the outskirts, Chloe wept as she watched photos of Zara's engagement on social media. The woman who had spent her life trying to imitate and surpass her friend finally understood that she had lost something irreplaceable by chasing an illusion. Her obsession had left her with nothing. No marriage, no friends, no self-respect. Victor, sitting in the same apartment, looked at the same photos with a mixture of regret and admiration. The woman he had taken for granted for 8 years now shone with a light he had never known how to appreciate. He had realized too late that he had held a diamond in his hands and exchanged it for colored glass. But for Zara, the past was exactly that. The past. Her future stretched out like a blank canvas, ready to be painted with the brightest colors of her new life. She had learned that true victory was not in revenge, but in the ability to rise, rebuild, and find authentic happiness. The betrayer had cried in despair. The mistress had begged for forgiveness, but the wife had been cheered not only at that luxurious party, but in life itself. And that ovation would continue to resonate in every sure step she took toward her bright future, next to a man who truly deserved her. The story of Zara Mendez had become a legend in Orlando, a reminder that dignity always triumphs over betrayal and that strong women don't break. They transform into diamonds under pressure. Part 6. The legacy continues. 5 years later, the aroma of Colombian coffee and freshly baked croissants drifted across the elegant terrace of the new Renacer Café Boutique, located in the heart of Park Avenue in Winter Park. It was a spring Sunday morning, and Zara Herrera, formerly Mendez, watched with satisfaction as her latest business project had become the favorite meeting spot for Orlando's most influential women. Renacer, Rebirth, was not just a cafe, it was a symbol. Every corner had been designed by Zara as a sanctuary for women seeking to reinvent themselves, overcome crises, or simply find inspiration in an environment that breathed female empowerment. The walls were decorated with photographs of successful women in the community, and in the center, framed in gold, was the cover of Forbes magazine, where Zara had been featured as Florida's Entrepreneur of the Year for her design consultancy chain, which now spanned 5 states. "Mommy, can we go to the park now?" Sonia's sweet little voice, her 3-year-old daughter, interrupted her thoughts. The girl was a perfect blend of Zara's and Kian's features, curly blonde hair like her mother's, but with her father's intense green eyes. "In a little while, my love," Zara replied, lifting the little one into her arms. "Daddy is finishing reviewing the plans for the new garden." Kian emerged from the back office of the cafe, carrying rolls of architectural blueprints and wearing that smile that still made Zara's heart leap with joy after 5 years of marriage. His landscaping company had grown exponentially, largely thanks to the momentum he gained after his love story with Zara went public. Couples across the country wanted the man who had healed the broken heart of America's bravest woman to design their home gardens. "Ready for our family Sunday?" Kian asked, kissing Zara on the forehead before tickling Sonia, who erupted in crystalline laughter. As they headed toward the park, Zara reflected on how her life had changed in these 5 years. The gala scandal had become a turning point, not only for her, but for thousands of women who had found the courage to face their own situations of emotional abuse or infidelity after seeing her example. Her story had inspired a best-selling book, When the Diamond Shines Brightest, where she chronicled not only the events of that memorable night, but also the process of healing, self-discovery, and building a new identity. But beyond the media success, Zara had channeled her experience into something much more significant. The Renacer Foundation, a non-profit organization that helped women victims of infidelity and emotional abuse rebuild their lives. The foundation offered everything from free legal advice to professional training and had already helped over 2,000 women across the southeastern United States. "Do you know what day it is today?" Kian asked her as Sonia ran toward the swings. "How could I forget?" Zara smiled. It's exactly 5 years since Victor made his last call. It was true. Exactly 5 years ago, Victor had made his last desperate attempt to win Zara back. But much had happened since then. Victor now lived alone, working as a used car salesman, battling a depression that antidepressants couldn't fully control. Chloe had returned to Mexico, defeated and with her reputation ruined, living in near total isolation. "Do you ever feel sorry for them?" Kian asked Zara as they watched Sonia play with other children. Zara considered the question carefully. "I feel sorry for the people they became," she finally replied, "but not for the consequences of their choices. They chose to build their happiness on the destruction of mine. I simply refused to be a victim of their choices." It was a response she had perfected over the years, but it came genuinely from her heart. Zara had made peace with her past in a way few manage. She harbored no resentment, simply having learned to value her own dignity so much that she would never again allow anyone to put her second. "Mommy, look how high I can go," Sonia shouted from the swings, radiating the innate confidence Zara hoped her daughter would keep all her life. "Very good, my love," Zara replied, feeling a wave of gratitude for the life she had built. Her phone vibrated with a message from Sandra, her private investigator friend, who now served as the director of security for the Renacer Foundation. "Zara, the Netflix documentary crew arrives tomorrow. They want to interview 10 of the women we helped last year for the special they're doing on the foundation. All set." Zara smiled. Netflix had decided to make a documentary about the social impact of her story, focusing on how one woman had turned her most painful moment into a force for positive change for thousands of others. The documentary would be called After the Waltz: How Dignity Changed Lives, and it would premiere next year. "What is your favorite part of this whole story?" Kian asked her, hugging her from behind. "That the end wasn't about revenge, or about proving I was better than them," Zara confessed. "It was about discovering who I truly was when no one else was defining me." Her triumph had not been in the public humiliation of Victor and Chloe. Her true triumph was discovering that she was capable of building an extraordinary life entirely on her own. Zara had started as a woman who defined her worth through her marriage, and had evolved into someone who inspired others to find their own internal value. The woman who had entered that gala 5 years ago with a broken heart had left it as a phoenix, and now, 5 years later, she had built a legacy that would endure far beyond her own life. The legacy of that night at the Ritz-Carlton continued to grow, not as a story of revenge, but as a testament to the transformative power of dignity, self-love, and the unbreakable determination of a woman who refused to be a victim of others' choices.